Hey everyone, Duke here, and today we're talking about how to complete the reprised version of the Crota's End raid. If you ran this raid in D1, it's going to look familiar, but there's quite a few mechanic additions and changes throughout, so let's get right into it. And if you need a team to help you complete the raid or have any questions, I'll be teaching this raid on stream quite often this season at twitch.tv/dukeiscool, so come on by. The opening area of the Crota's End raid when you load in is going to teach us a few important mechanics for the entire raid. First is the Chalice of Light. By picking this up, you will get a bar that starts charging in your Buffs UI on the left side of your screen. Note that while holding the Chalice of Light anywhere in the raid, you can charge it faster by getting kills. It will take 30 seconds to fully charge if you don't kill anything, but you can make it charge pretty significantly faster by defeating enemies. When each of the 4 bars completely fills up, you will get an additional debuff called Engulfed in Light for 10 seconds. Someone else on the team is going to need to grab the chalice from you in this 10-second window, otherwise you will die when the debuff hits 0. If they do successfully take it from you, you will become enlightened. This buff is going to do a number of things throughout the raid, but for this first area it will allow you to start charging the plate by interacting with it. You will then be able to speed up the bridge forming process by having your next person acquire the enlightened buff in the same way. Make sure to keep standing on the plate itself while doing this so the bridge keeps forming, but pretty quickly the bridge should be formed and you'll be able to drop down into the Lamps encounter. Once you reach the bottom of the pit, you'll be in the Lamps encounter. This encounter has quite a few different strategies that you could use to complete it, but the overall goal is to traverse your way through the entire maze to the final plate, and then charge that plate to form the bridge and go through to the next encounter. Throughout this encounter, there will be a number of pendulums and holes. You do not want to get hit by the pendulums because they hurt a lot, and of course you don't want to fall down the holes, as you will die. Note that the pendulums have a very large hitbox, so going around the path or letting them swing in front of you and then moving can be very helpful. Things like swords and air movement like Strand Grapple and Icarus Dash can additionally be very helpful to traverse easier. To start with mechanics, we will again have the Chalice of Light. It works exactly the same as in the opening plate area. Charge it to full and have someone grab off of you once you have Engulfed in Light in order to become enlightened. Additionally, this encounter will have 2 permanent debuffs, Engulfed in Darkness and Weight of Darkness. Engulfed in Darkness will start as soon as you start the encounter and has a 60-second timer. If this timer hits 0, you will wipe. There's 2 ways to reset this timer, both of which will reset the timer back to the full 60 seconds. The first way is by preserving the chalice in the same little platforms where the chalice is originally held. On top of resetting your wipe timer, these chalice preservation spots will serve as checkpoints if the current chalice holder dies for whatever reason, and the chalice ends up despawning off the map. Also, preserving the chalice is required in order to, quote, half-charge the next set of lamps, that's what I'm calling it at least, in the sequence as you make your way through the maze. Basically, if you don't do this, the next lamps won't be lit up at all, and you won't be able to progress. These chalice preservation spots will be at the very first lamp, and then every few lamps from there. You'll notice a very small amount of light coming from these spots to help signify their locations, but they're certainly not the most noticeable things. When you preserve the chalice, you'll need someone else to pick it up out of the holder to continue along the path. Anytime you dunk the chalice or use your Enlighten buff, you will get a 45-second debuff called Drained of Light that stops you from being able to grab the chalice again during this time. Also, you cannot grab the chalice while you currently have the Enlightened buff. The second way to reset the Engulfed in Darkness timer is by enlightening a lamp. This feeds into the second debuff in the encounter, Weight of Darkness. This debuff will constantly stack on you and goes up to ×10, slowing you more and more as the stacks go up. The only way to remove this debuff is by using your Enlightened buff on a lamp and standing next to it, which will slowly bring your Weight of Darkness back down to 0, allowing you to move faster again for a bit. However, enlightening a lamp will also cause it to explode after about 10 seconds, insta-killing anyone who is still next to it. After making your way through the maze by using the lamps and chalice preservation spots, you'll eventually get to the final lamp and a plate right behind it. Using your Enlighten buff on this plate will allow it to start charging, and then extra Enlighten buffs can be used to accelerate the enlightenment, which will build the bridge to get across faster. There will be a number of adds attacking you at this point, including some unstoppable ogres, so I'd recommend having a way to stun those ogres and having a way to kill a good amount of adds here. Once the bridge is formed, you can make your way to the bright light to complete the first encounter. Do note that there are a few more pendulums to avoid on the bridge, and only one person needs to make it to and through the light in order to complete the encounter and get your loot. The second encounter is the bridge. This encounter involves first building the bridge and then sending people over to the other side to kill special blue knights called gatekeepers. To start, there's this same Chalice of Light mechanic. Hold the Chalice of Light until it's full, and then have someone else grab it off of you to become enlightened. The Enlightened buff will have two uses for this encounter. First, it's going to be used to charge the bridge for it to form, just like before. The first 3 people that get enlightened should go to the middle plate after becoming enlightened, and use it to start and speed up the building of the bridge. If you ran Crota in D1, this next part will be very familiar, but you'll additionally need one person to stand on the middle plate to keep it building, and whenever the middle plate is stood on, it will cause the 2 side totems to start flaming and kill you after a few seconds. But by having someone underneath each of these totems, it will keep this from happening and allow the bridge to form with no issues. As the bridge is forming, continue passing around the chalice to get everyone on the team enlightened except for the final person. This final person will bring the chalice across the bridge and preserve it in the holder on the other side, as it will not be needed to be used again until the very end of the encounter. By this point, the sword bearer should easily have spawned. This enemy actually spawns a bit before you'll be fully set up, so I'd recommend just killing him early and letting the first sword or maybe 2 despawn until you're fully set up with everyone having enlightenment, as this will keep things much more organized. Once you do have this set up, go ahead and pick up the sword from the next sword bearer. The reason for getting everyone enlightened is that you need the enlightened buff in order to pick up a sword. Additionally, you can only cross the bridge while either holding a sword or holding the chalice. Once you get to the other side with the sword, a gatekeeper will spawn out of the doors directly in front of you. This gatekeeper can only be killed by this special sword, so focus him down, and your teammate that came across first with the chalice can use forms of healing to help keep you alive if needed, with Well of Radiance making things especially easy. After defeating the gatekeeper, you'll notice multiple waypoints appear that allow you to preserve the sword. Dunk the sword in one of these waypoints. After a few moments, another sword bearer should spawn on the original side. Have someone else kill this and repeat the process of coming across the bridge with the sword, killing another gatekeeper, and preserving the sword. Do note to make sure to keep someone on the middle plate as well as underneath the 2 side totems while this is all going on, so that the bridge can stay formed and you can get across it. Once the first 3 people are across, they're going to now form the bridge from the plates and totems on the far side of the room. The 3 people on the starting side can group up and stay safe on the stairs near where the raid flag was, while the far side team gets set up and gets the bridge reformed. Once they are set up, go ahead and kill the next sword bearer, and one of the 3 remaining people will pick it up, go across, and kill the next gatekeeper. Preserve that sword, and then repeat that process until the final 2 people are across. This will make it so that all 6 people are now on the far side with 5 swords preserved. Do note that if for whatever reason someone on the starting side dies or loses enlightened for whatever reason, you can always have someone grab the chalice from where you dunked it on the far side and run it backwards across the bridge to re-enlighten them so that they can get across. Just make sure that someone with a res does this if it's someone that happens to have gone down. At this point, you can all group up in the middle and just start slaying adds. There will be a number of barrier champions and other enemies that consistently spawn. You're definitely going to want barrier for this encounter just as a whole, because there'll be barriers throughout. You should also pick up the chalice again at this point and start getting people the enlightened buff again. This is because after a bit, 2 ogres will spawn on the far left and far right sides. After defeating them, the swords you preserved earlier will be able to be picked up again, but only if you have the enlightened buff. At the same time, 5 final gatekeepers will come rushing out in front of you, so you're going to want to have at least a few people with these swords to take them down. Once all 5 final gatekeepers are defeated, make sure to re-preserve the chalice if it's not already, and the encounter will be complete. Next, we have a very brief interlude encounter. Here we will be taught about the enlightened buff being able to allow players to go through otherwise blocked off barriers. Pick 2 players that are going to get enlightened. As before, try to let them get some of the kills so that the chalice fills up faster. After the first player becomes enlightened, they should immediately run through the first screen barrier and take down the Shrieker. This will remove the barrier and allow everyone to move forward. After the second player becomes enlightened, they can run through the second barrier and kill the second Shrieker. The person with the chalice at this point should be ready to move forward extremely quickly with the chalice. If they can make it to the end and preserve the chalice before the door at the far side of the room closes, the door will reopen and give your entire team an extra secret chest. If not, no big deal, you can still progress to the next encounter, just without this extra secret chest. Next we have the Air Ute encounter. As a quick aside, Aeons and Cenotaph Mask are absolutely nuts for this encounter, granting your team infinite heavy with the infinitely spawning Yellow Bar Knights. They aren't required whatsoever, but it's just funny to see how much heavy you can make for your team. To start this encounter, you will want to send 3 people left and 3 people right, making sure to kill the knights along the way. Once you make it to each of the side rooms, there will be several more knights to kill and a Shrieker. After defeating a few enemies, the Shrieker will open, and once the Shriekers on both sides have been killed, the doors to the middle will open, and you'll be able to pick up the Chalice. For the first round, you'll need to get 3 people enlightened using the Chalice. The goal of this encounter is to defeat Ute, which you will need to take down her shield in order to do that. Taking down this shield will require you to defeat the wizards in the 7 towers around the room. There are 3 towers directly above you when in the Chalice room on the left, middle, and right, along with a top and bottom room in the far left and far right towers. Each of these rooms will have either a wizard or a Shrieker, and can only be entered with someone that has the Enlightened buff. For the first round, there will be 3 of these 7 towers with wizards, and killing all 3 of the wizards will break Ute's shield. Entering past the barrier of any of these towers will remove your Enlightened buff, so you'll need to immediately choose the correct room. There are 2 main ways to do this. The first is to use Wishender to look through the walls and see the enemies within each room. The second is to use the minimap, noticing that the Shriekers show a big red circle on the minimap if there is one in the room. You can additionally sometimes just see a wizard or a Shrieker peeking out at some angles, but the first 2 strategies are the most consistently effective. Importantly, the damage phase will start as soon as one wizard dies, so you'll want to make sure to wait until everyone is ready to kill their wizard until killing any of them. After they've all been defeated, Ute's shield will go down, and you'll have about 45 seconds to be able to do damage. There is a minimum amount of damage that must be done to not wipe, but there is no maximum, other than killing Ute. Having a Divinity is a very good choice for this encounter, as Ute tends to fly around a lot, and Divinity will also allow you to hit shots very easily, and can be paired extremely well with the Cenotaph Mask, as mentioned earlier. There's 2 ways to deal with the Chalice during damage phase. First, you can deposit it back below where the boss spawns, allowing you to preserve it and then repick it up after the damage phase. Secondly, you can hang on to it and have someone else grab it from you during the damage phase. This will require a bit of additional communication and teamwork during this phase, but it does give the benefit of having an extra Enlighten buff going into the second round. This can be helpful because there will be a 4th wizard to find and kill for the second round, and a 5th wizard if you need to take a 3rd phase to kill Ute. No matter the strategy you choose, the next rounds will be the same, with needing to get Enlightened players to go to the correct towers to take down the wizards, which will then break Ute's shield again, with again the only change being the added wizard in each round. Once Ute has been defeated, you're on to the final boss, Crota. The final boss is Crota, son of Oryx. The Chalice and Enlighten mechanic is back once again here, but with a twist. In order to pass the Chalice, both the person with the Chalice and the person grabbing the Chalice must be in the pool of light that spawns in one of the 5 random spots around the room. You'll be unable to pass the Chalice if standing anywhere else but this specific location. Getting 5 people enlightened, with the 6th person depositing the Chalice into the preservation spot from last encounter, is your main goal here. The Chalice spawns on a pillar in the bottom middle of the room, so make sure someone runs and grabs that ASAP when starting the encounter to start the rotation. While working on getting these Enlightened buffs, you'll also want to work on getting some Sword Bearers to spawn so that you'll have swords to take down Crota's shield. There'll be 2 boomers in the top left and top right towers to take down, and defeating all 4 of these will spawn in 2 ogres near the middle, as well as a Sword Bearer. Take down the ogres first, as they are the bigger threat, and then take down the Sword Bearer. Your first person with Enlightened should grab this sword and can use it to take down enemies. Again, just like earlier, you need Enlightened to be able to pick up these swords. After defeating the Sword Bearer, 3 sets of 2 wizards each will spawn in the same spot that the ogres did. Take these down and then head back to the towers to take down the next set of Boomer Knights. The same rotation of 2 Boomer Knights in each tower, 2 ogres, a Sword Bearer, and then 6 total wizards will be your add spawn triggers throughout. In my experience, going through 3 rotations to get 3 swords is your best bet for extremely safe shield breaking. Once you have 3 Sword Bearers, have everyone rotate to the original spawn room and prepare. If you have someone on Well of Radiance, which I would definitely recommend if not, have them lead the way to drop a well on Crota to keep your 3 sword users safe as they break his shield. Additionally, having a non-sword user on Tractor Cannon can be used to increase the damage of these swords, as well as increase weapon damage once the shield is broken. Note that you don't have to break the shield in one go like this. This is actually the challenge strat, but after doing Contest Crota on challenge and experiencing the flow both ways, I find this strategy to keep the flow of the encounter much more manageable and easier for everyone. Once Crota's shield is broken, you'll be able to do damage to him. Crota will summon his Oversoul as well, giving you 30 seconds to do damage until you die. This is where the additional Enlightened players will come in. One of these players should be assigned to shooting the Oversoul. The Oversoul is pretty much the entire sky on the far side of the room, and can be easily broken with 2 fusion rifle shots at any range that I've tried it at. You'll want to break this as close to 0 seconds as possible without going too close and causing a wipe, because once the Oversoul is broken, the damage phase is over. Any additional players with Enlighten during this damage phase can expunge Crota to do some extra damage. You'll see an interact button that says expunge when standing next to Crota in order to do this. Again, make sure that the person that is shooting the Oversoul does not do this, because it will remove your Enlighten buff. After the damage phase, the first player in the sequence should run to pick up the chalice from the preservation holder, and repeat the process for a second round. You do have up to 3 phases to reach final stand, but you'll most likely hit it on the second round with most setups. When you do reach final stand, Crota will shield up and do a big explosion after a few seconds, so run away a bit and wait for this to happen. A few seconds after the explosion, he'll summon a new Oversoul and become damageable again for 20 seconds. Once again, you can break this Oversoul during the final stand to stop it from wiping you. However, this will just cause him to summon another Oversoul, this time with only a 10-second timer. Defeat Crota before this Oversoul kills you to complete the Crota's End raid. As one final note, after your first run, don't forget to grab the Bottomless Pit quest to get started on acquiring Necrochasm. I hope this guide to the Crota's End raid was helpful, and don't forget I'll be teaching this raid a bunch on my stream over the coming weeks, so definitely come check us out over there if you are interested. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.